Good day. My name is Gunay Evinch. I co-chair the Turkish American National Steering Committee, and I co-host TASC Roots on TASCTV. TASCTV is in 24/7 live streaming, and we bring a variety of programs to inform the Turkish American community. And TASC Roots is about grassroots. How can the Turkish American community be more active in American grassroots democracy on all levels, not just political, but also trade, social, cultural. And today we have a very special guest, Mr. Mark Murphy, candidate for president of the Staten Island Borough in the New York region. Welcome, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well, Gunay. Thank you, and thank you so much to TASC for having me here today. It is a great honor. I'm very humbled. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Staten Island has a diverse community, including Turkish Americans, and the Turkish American community wanted to hear from you about the island, about the borough, about the broader New York region, and the challenges and the opportunities, and a little bit about you for our audience. And we are reaching now over 2 million viewers per month. In the 2010s, you worked in the office of the New York Public Advocate, New York City Public Advocate. And then in 2012, you challenged Congressman Michael Grimm. And then later that year, the tragedy of Hurricane Sandy, you worked at relief efforts for the whole region, including, of course, your home borough, Staten Island. And you come from a heritage of public service. It's in your personal DNA, your cultural DNA. You want to serve the public. We see that firmly here. Your father was a congressman, John Murphy, between 1963 and 1991. That's a long time. That was the year I was born first, and then the year I graduated from high school. And he was close to President Lyndon Johnson, and he worked closely on issues of civil rights, voting rights, Medicare. All these are very important to the health of the country, and they fulfill the promise of the Constitution of equality and equal opportunity. So that's the introduction I have for you. You have a strong resume here and a great personality. So let's get into it. So tell us about Staten Island and New York, the relations between the city and Staten Island Borough, and the opportunities as well as the challenges.
Gunay, thank you again for having me. And I'll tell you, I'll jump back really quickly. My father, who was a West Point graduate, right after graduating from West Point, where he was first captain of the class of 1950, he went to the Korean War and fought alongside Turkish soldiers in that war in 1950 through 1951. And he told me what great, exceptional officers he fought with in winning that Korean War. And that was genuinely one of the great honors of his life, is fighting in combat with those great men from Korea, from Turkey in Korea. So those are great memories that he had and had told me prior to him passing away a few years ago. But it was something that really left a lasting impression on him throughout his entire life. So again, I am happy to be here and happy to talk to you, and happy to talk to you a little bit about Staten Island, which is this small yet large island in the middle of New York Harbor, and is what so many people have been calling for the last 32 years the forgotten borough of New York City. As you know, New York City has 5 boroughs: Manhattan, Brooklyn, the Bronx, Queens, and Staten Island. And it is the only borough that is not attached to the rest of the 5 boroughs by a rapid transit system like a subway train. We have a ferry that goes from St. George, Staten Island, to Whitehall, New York City, every half an hour, except during rush hour, we get it every 15 minutes. And 2 million people a year take that ferry. Staten Islanders of all walks of life. Our immigrant communities, especially in the North Shore, where we have our developing communities, they rely on that piece of transportation to get to and from New York. And I will tell you, it is one of the most beautiful rides. It is completely free. And I would always encourage anybody who comes to New York to visit, to ride that Staten Island ferry and visit Staten Island and see what we have to offer here.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the ferry boats that go between the European side and the Asian side in Istanbul. before the bridges were built, before the underground, the subway system was built that goes under the Bosphorus Straits. What's the population of Staten Island, and what's the demographic makeup? And it's a suburb. It's a classical suburb.
Yes, it is. We have about 475,000 people in Staten Island, which, if Staten Island were a city in New Jersey, it'd be the largest city in the state of New Jersey. So, or Connecticut. So Staten Island is not an insignificant place, but in New York City, we are the smallest of the 5 boroughs. We only represent about a sixth of the entire vote of New York City when it comes to our elections. So we are obviously overlooked much of the time during the elective process, and because of that, we don't always get our fair share from our elected officials in New York City, where City Hall is located.
And so that's one challenge of the city. The other 4 boroughs dominate in the representation of the city, of the region, of all the boroughs. And how does that play out? How does Staten Island get or not get what it needs? Or what does it get sometimes that it absolutely does not need?
Well, for many years, what it got that it did not need was the rest of the city of New York's garbage, which unfortunately gave us a very, very bad name back up until the early 1990s. But 30 years ago, they did close that dump, and we have been building ever since a community, a bedroom community, a suburban community, really what I like to call the gem of New York City. We are the borough of parks, and right on top of the old Fresh Kills landfill, we're building a giant park now, Fresh Kills Park. And it is absolutely beautiful. It is a very high point on the eastern seaboard. It has so many things to offer our community. And again, we have a variety of other parks throughout Staten Island. And what I like to say is, and what I'm fighting for as I run to be borough president of Staten Island, is to make Staten Island cleaner, greener, safer, and stronger for all of New York, but especially for those people that live here in Staten Island. We have so many different communities here now. When I was young, it was a community that was much, much smaller, maybe a quarter of what it is today. And again, it was a proud immigrant community then of Irish and Italian and Polish. And it has changed over the years to be an exceptional tapestry of other great cultures and communities that have come and moved here, many of whom are from Turkey. We have a large Muslim community that has come to the North Shore of Staten Island and has been welcomed. And my good friend, just the other day, Imam Tahir, I met him at his mosque on the first day of Ramadan. And I had a wonderful experience talking with everybody there. And we also have exceptional Sri Lankan community and a very large Russian community and a very ever-growing community of different folks from Africa who are moving here. And it really gives us all a melting pot, if you will, to live here in Staten Island. But one thing I will say is that we're an island, and we are all, no matter what religion, no matter what race, no matter what background we come from, we are all Staten Islanders first. And that is where I think we all have a great camaraderie, because we all know that the city of New York doesn't pave our roads as fast. They don't get over here and do the things that we need them to do for us. They don't give us the funding for our hospitals. They don't give us the funding for our police and our fire. But we as Staten Islanders, all of us, suffer because of it.
You described pretty much a green place, a green island. It reminded me of, I grew up in California, and in Lake Tahoe, there's this island in a cove, and it's called Emerald Island. And definitely, it seems like you are on a mission to make Staten Island green, more environmentally safe, and also appealing to its community with parks by the people, for the people. Sounds great. And, at TASC, we support solidarity in American diversity. We have, as Americans, so much more in common than we don't. And I think that is a special characteristic of this country, where the diversity comes together in a melting pot and through integration. And in your case, we become Staten Islanders, or in my case, we become Potomac Marylanders. And so on the diversity side of Staten Island, you had mentioned the Turkish American community. We come to you through the connection of a very important Turkish American community leader, İbrahim Kurtuluş. So I want to thank him, especially for introducing us to each other. With respect to diversity on Staten Island, what are some of the cultural activities that are either in existence or developing? For example, an international festival or international foods festival.
Well, I'll say we have wonderful cultural centers, and the cultural centers really were created in some instances. One of the largest ones, Sailor's Snug Harbor, which is in the North Shore of Staten Island, was created by a man named Robert Randall, who wanted to make sure that the merchant seamen who brought goods from Europe here were protected in their older years. We're talking 1850s, 1860s. And he established this great retirement home for them. And now, 2021, really in the 1970s, this established itself into a great cultural center when the Snugs left, and this became a collection of museums and art and cultural exhibits. Every year we have so many different festivals there, whether it's a Polish Day festival or a Pakistani Day festival, or I think they get into the Irish and St. Patrick Festival. It is a tapestry of them. And what we are able to do is we're able to, and again, to my discredit, I have to say I over-test the food at all of these festivals because it's starting to catch up with me. But it's wonderful to get to know everyone in those communities, especially at a cultural center like that is very Americana, if you will, and then is so welcoming of all the different cultures that come to Staten Island. You know, we in New York City have such a giant group of people here that it's important to recognize that many of them are not always recognized when it comes to the services of the city of New York. For instance, you know, our school children get meals. They get meals given to them every single day for breakfast, for lunch, but not all of those meals are always appropriate for them. And it is something that I want to make sure for all of the cultures in New York that we provide to those children a halal protein in the morning, as opposed to something that is not appropriate for them culturally. This goes not just for our Muslim community, but also a kosher protein for a Jewish community. We need to make sure that the kids in our community are welcomed and get those services that they need. In addition, you know, I want to also make sure that in the city of New York, and they have begun to do this, recognize Ramadan is a great holiday, and to give to our friends in the Muslim community the ability to celebrate, just like we do Christmas, Easter, Passover, Rosh Hashanah, and Kwanzaa, that we also have a recognition for them as well. Being a part of the melting pot, you know, just like when you make a giant stew, you want to make sure that every single element in that stew works together and gets its appropriate ingredient. And that is what I want to do as a leader here, is make sure that everybody is welcome, everybody is represented, and that goes to the staff that I look to assemble on day one. I have said this from the beginning, that when I become borough president in Staten Island, God willing, that I will have the most diverse and the most inclusive staff in the history of the borough president's office in Staten Island. And that means one of the first 3 people I will hire on my staff is someone from our Muslim community, to make sure that they are talking to everybody who comes from Europe, from Asia, who comes here and becomes a part of Staten Island. Not just America, because that is a very big and broad term, but from Staten Island, so that they know they have a voice here, they have a friend here, and that Borough Hall is their hall too.
know, you reminded me, well, there are these heritage councils where everyone can come together as advisors from different backgrounds and then help guide, in your case, hopefully, the president of Staten Island. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence of the United States had a heritage council where they brought representatives from diverse backgrounds to talk about issues relating to the United States, integration, security, and it worked out very well. So it's very encouraging to hear that you are considering advisors of diverse backgrounds. I think if your leadership includes staff that reflect the community of Staten Island Borough, then the policies that are promulgated and implemented in Staten Borough will be satisfactory and in the full service of everybody, not just one part of the community. What's the demographic of your population? Are they professionals? Are they a little bit professional, a little bit skilled labor, business owners? And do they work in Staten Island or do they commute?
Well, they do both. We have a very, very large population of union households, and that is sort of two different classes of union households. One are our service unions, and those unions that work inside our hospitals that help take care of the frontline responders, essentially. Those folks, many of them work in Staten Island, but they also travel all throughout New York City to work at the hospitals in New York City. So we have a large community there, and we also have our other labor unions that are not service unions, but are trade unions, our union electricians and plumbers and sheet metal workers, etc. And there are many, many families here. There are some households or some communities that have the highest concentration of households that are union members in the city of New York, maybe even in the United States. And that is a very important thing to recognize, that there is a very large part of Staten Island that is a blue collar community, that is a working and middle class community. And that is a community that needs to make sure that they are protected with, their worker rights are protected by the legislation that is passed in the City Council of New York. And that's a big part. The other thing about Staten Island, though, to just take note, is that we have lots and lots of small businesses. And those small businesses are huge generators for our community, and we must not allow them to remain closed any longer than we must for safety purposes during this COVID. And because of that, I'm always encouraging the governor and the mayor, because Staten Island is different than, say, Manhattan or Queens, to open us up again early, because we are much more like the suburbs, and they have allowed those areas to open up. But unfortunately, I think our political leaders here at a much higher level than the job I seek, our political leaders have punished Staten Island, because the rhetoric that is unfortunate in politics today attacks them or chastises them for closing us down and not opening us up early. So they punish us for it. That I find unfortunate. We were not one of the areas in the state of New York that got a state-run COVID vaccine facility until many, many months after every other portion of the state got one. So it's things like that where we still have that moniker of being the forgotten borough. And we need to fight. I intend to do that, just like many of my friends in Staten Island do, to make sure that we are no longer forgotten, that we put Staten Island first.
Sounds like underrepresentation is a serious problem there. And unfortunately, and the one size fits all definitely is not going to work. It has to be far more tailored. How do you increase the representation or the impact of your representation?
Well, I believe that's a very good question. And how do we increase our representation? We really can't. But how do we increase the effectiveness of our reputation? So for many, many years, Staten Island has been represented by a Republican in Borough Hall. And the city of New York, the mayors of the city of New York, have been Republican up until Michael Bloomberg left. And I believe that we had a good working relationship between the mayor and the borough president. Those days are over. And I believe that if we were to elect someone who was much more conservative ideologically, who was a Republican, and put them into a position where they went to City Hall to ask for something, Staten Island would be on the outside looking in. And we can't have that. We need somebody who knows how to work with the people in City Hall, who is a Democrat, which is what I am. But I am also not a far progressive Democrat. I am a moderate Democrat, somebody who believes that we need to take care of our communities, that we need to get the illegal guns off of the streets, that we need to fund our healthcare facilities that are here, somebody who believes in protecting us in higher education for our kids. And that is something that I think we need to make sure that the leadership talks to City Hall in New York about that and is able to make sure that we are represented. And the only way to do that is not be on the outside looking in, but getting a seat at the table. And that's something that I've always had, and it's something that I relish having in the days ahead.
It's like both a combination of political chemistry and personal chemistry, which you're definitely coming with as a candidate. So with respect to the elderly, our parents, my parents, they're advanced in their ages, and sometimes I find that we forget about our elderly because it's such a young, dynamic culture that we have in America. We talked about the students, then the public schools, and education, and nutrition, and cultural sensitivity. Let's talk about the elderly. What are their needs, and what should we do for them? How can we help them?
Excellent question. And again, this goes back to education, and it goes back to nutrition. Many of the senior centers in Staten Island need to provide. I know in Brooklyn and in Manhattan and other places, they do provide, say, a kosher protein to the seniors in the Jewish centers in Brooklyn, Manhattan. In Staten Island, I don't believe that we're getting as much of an impact, or we're not getting the dollars to our cultural centers, to our senior centers, to be able to provide to them a halal protein, to provide the community, these wonderful seniors that are coming into these senior centers to engage with each other and have community while the young, robust children are out working. They do need to be provided for. And that is one thing that is very important to me. The other, of course, is transportation. And in New York, we have a great Access-A-Ride program. We need to expand upon it and make sure we have more Access-A-Ride so that larger van can come to somebody who may need it, who is wheelchair bound. And we make sure that our seniors have that access. Just recently, I was given a phone call from the Cespino Russo American Legion post, one of the great posts where so many great Americans who have served in our military overseas during World War II, during Korea, during Vietnam, they come and they gather together in a communal setting. They needed a chairlift to be able to bring wheelchairs in because the members are getting old now. And my uncle Newt, who served in Korea as well as an infantry officer, he's 93 years old, although he can walk into the building. Many of his friends cannot. And I was just asked the other day, how can we get a lift for these folks? I'm not an elected official today, but I picked up my phone book, I looked through it, and I found someone here in Staten Island, the great Dr. Teddy Atlas Foundation, and they donated a lift to the Cespino Russo post. This is a non-political thing. This is about community service and making sure that our seniors can have access to the community events that they deserve, to the community that they protected and helped. And that was something that I take great pride in. I didn't go and seek out any kind of recognition for it, but I was really happy that I was able to help that group of great Americans, the greatest generation, who are no longer able to get in to that building.
access for our elderly and respect to our elderly, especially in situations where we have people who have served this country. Definitely, we are with you all the way on that. Helping our elderly, helping our young people. You know, there's that Crosby, Stills and Nash song, teach your children well and teach your parents well. This is the way it works. With the full spectrum of community awareness and engagement. We have 1 minute left, Mark, and I'd like to thank you for joining, and I'd like to invite you to closing statements, and it's really been an honor and pleasure to have you on TASC Roots.
Gunay, thank you. It is my honor. It is my pleasure. And I thank TASC Roots for having me. You know, like you said, it is about grassroots. All politics is local. And that is why I'm staying local here in Staten Island. But I am so happy that my voice will have a reach to the great Turkish community and have them know that even in our small local races, like a borough president for Staten Island, that somebody is thoughtful and cares about every member of our community, including our Turkish community. And that's very important to me. I'm just very pleased to be here today. It is my pleasure. And I hope that folks from all over the United States who are watching us all over the world will watch this race and say, hey, they've got a horse in this race, and they can root for me, because rooting for me is really rooting for Staten Island and our effort to rebrand Staten Island and make it cleaner, greener, safer, and stronger. Really polish Staten Island and not allow the city of New York to punish us any further. Time to make Staten Island first. I'm the guy to do it, and I hope that all of your listeners will be able to just keep their ear to it and go, hey, I remember that guy when he was borough president.
We will remember, and we will be with you all the way.
Good day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Be well, be safe, and God bless you and your family.
God bless you as well. Thank you.